Hello, everyone, and we are back for another podcast with video. So, a vodcast. I don't think anyone calls them vodcasts anymore. That was like a 2011 thing. But I'm Christopher Lloyd, and I'm joined here, of course, by Alec Toombs.
How's it going, guys?
And we thought we would talk today about basketball movies because it's cold, it's winter. As we're recording this, it's the middle of a winter storm. So it's a good time to be inside watching a basketball game on TV. But we're getting into, the NBA season is and the college seasons are kind of stoking up to their high points as football winds down. And it's just a time to think about basketball movies and kind of where they've been. And one of the things I wanted to mention, Alec, is that there really hasn't been a ton of basketball movies relative to baseball or football or other sports. I mean, heck, there's probably been as many hockey movies as there's been basketball movies. And of course, I'd like to think that basketball is more popular than hockey, but it seems like when I think about all the really iconic basketball movies, it seems like they're from the 80s, 90s, maybe the early aughts. It seems like the last 15 or 20 years or so, there just hasn't been as many. I don't know. Is that your perception or maybe not?
There's not a ton. I did see a few, both in 2020 and 2021. I know The Way Back, I guess, would technically be a basketball movie, the Ben Affleck thing,
Yeah.
but it never actually showed the games in the movie at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw a movie last year called Boogie that I actually enjoyed quite a bit, about a New York basketball player, high school kid. Thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. There was one last year that got a lot of High Flying Bird. That was about an agent from and it seems like it's been almost more like that, less on court basketball movies and more about stuff that's happening off the court.
Sure.
Like High Flying Bird, I'm not sure if there's actually any basketball.
You might see him shooting hoops, like just practicing or something, but I think that's the extent of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned The Way Back with, of course, with Ben Affleck, which I think that was like a thing that was is they really didn't want it to be about what happened on the court. They wanted to be about the coach and his alcoholism and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to go through a list of some that I threw together real quick. Love and Basketball, Hoop Dreams, Hoosiers, The Basketball Diaries, Blue Chips, The Way Back, Uncle Drew, Semi-Pro, Just Right, Glory Road, He Got Game, Coach Carter, Space Jam 1 and 2, White Man Can't Jump, Sunset Park, I mentioned High Flying Bird, and Cornbread, Earl and Me. That last one is probably the oldest one, going back to I think the 1970s. That's really interesting. Why the popularity of basketball has sort of, I don't know, it wasn't as popular as a mainstream sport maybe in the 50s and 60s, but I think from the 70s, especially the 80s and 90s on up, its popularity has really grown. So why do you think basketball has not been as ripe a sports movie topic as maybe other sports?
I mean, to begin with, I'm not sure it says cinematographic, is that word? Or as, say, football. There's not as much visceral action to it, in my opinion. Maybe harder to capture as well. That would be my guess. But
I have a theory, and it's probably maybe a little bit in contradiction of yours, which is I think basketball is very exciting. And what makes it exciting is that there's action constantly going on that is impacting the game. Whereas other sports, particularly the ones that are most popular for movies, for football and baseball, have long dead spots where there's not really a lot going on, or there's not really going on that's really breakout and impactful. Like, one of my favorite stats to throw around is NFL games are 60 minutes long.
Sure.
4 15-minute quarters. It actually takes about 3 to 50 hours, 15 minutes to actually play a game. Average NFL game actually contains 6 minutes of actual football action. Just because the clock runs,
Sure.
when it's not timeouts or there's not a dead ball and things like that. And of course, baseball is a very contemplative game. We'll use the polite terminology. My point being is that I think because you have all those gaps in football and baseball, there's a lot of opportunity to stick other things in there, to bring the humanity, bring stories in there, the interactions of the players, the catcher talking to the hitter, all, players talking to each other, the line of scrimmage. There's other things that can go on. Players don't really have an opportunity to interact with each other much during the game, other than timeouts and fouls and dead balls and things like that. That's my working theory.
It's an astute point you're making. I mean, it's constant movement, sort of like soccer in a way. I'm not sure it would necessarily translate. Maybe they want to take the timeouts that you get in football and baseball to delve into the human condition, the human emotion. Maybe there's not as much room for that with a basketball movie.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like some of the best baseball movies, in particular, like Bull Durham. I mean, there's very little baseball action in Bull Durham, or Bang the Drum Slowly, another older one from a long time ago. Very little baseball action in the thing, and I think it's because people like to sort of create the drama and sort of the big humanistic story around the game, so it's almost like the lore of the game as opposed to the game. Whereas basketball movies, a lot of them have tended to focus really on the game itself. I mean, obviously there's a lot of things going on, like Hoosiers, which is probably typified as, one of the most beloved and well-known basketball movies. There's a lot of stuff off the court, but there's a lot of stuff on the court. I've never timed it, but it's, it's everything is building up to the game. Whereas I think some of these other, like Bull Durham, the movie's not building up to the game. The game is almost secondary to what's going on in that.
Founded by Hickory in the backcourt, along the sideline, passed in by Ray Butcher, who was responsible for the interception. It goes into Buddy Walker. Walker on the attack, still in the backcourt.
So why don't we start with this? Tell me what's your favorite basketball movie and why, and I'll reciprocate.
I would say my favorite basketball movie is the documentary Hoop Dreams from, I believe, 1993 or 4.
Yeah.
Directed by Steve James. I just found the young men, Arthur Agee and William Gates, to be very fascinating figures. Agee's father also I found to be highly fascinating. I found the movie to be very powerful, very dynamic. To me, it's the best basketball movie there is.
The amazing story of two boys and two families struggling against the odds.
My mother, God bless her, she's always said to me, this is America. You can make something of your life.
Yeah, and so that would be one where obviously there's a lot of on-court action in that, but it's really about those human stories. It's about the kids, it's about racism, it's about poverty, it's about Black boys wanting to have the opportunity to make something of themselves, and they see basketball oftentimes as the only viable path to do that. And so as we watch them grow from boys to men, and chasing that dream, yeah, that's just an amazing. I mean, that would probably certainly be in my top 3 as well.
What would be your favorite?
I probably would go with Hoosiers, which I know seems like kind of a typical choice, but it's just such a great movie. Obviously it's an Indiana story, so now that I live in Indiana, I've got that going for it. But great performances, great basketball action, and it's just kind of the whole package. It's about it captures why basketball is important to people, obviously in Indiana, but I think the message translates to anywhere, why people love basketball, to go have a tiny little town in the middle of nowhere, but you can go and root for your team. And of course, in Indiana where, you have like tiny little rural school districts in the middle of northern or southern Indiana, and yet they will have like a huge modern state-of-the-art field house where they play their games at. That just sort of sums up what Hoosiers is all about.
I'm going to take a controversial stance here. I like Hoosiers. I find it very overrated, however. Like, I think Hackman's great in it. I think Dennis Hopper is great in it. It takes place in, was it the 1950s?
Yeah.
The 80s score always pulls me out of the movie. I kind of wish they'd gone with a score that's like the synth music and stuff. I know the movie was made in the 80s, but there feels like a weird
it's like synthesizers and electronic music, as I recall, isn't it?
Correct. Which, I mean, if I'm watching Scarface or something, that feels appropriate. But this movie that takes place in 1950s Indiana, it feels kind of weird.
Yeah, and I've heard other people, including people in Indiana, say that they like the movie, but they find it overrated. We won't.
It's good. I'm not arguing that. I just find it slightly overrated.
Yeah, I should mention Angelo Pizzo, the writer of Hoosiers and obviously Rudy and some other iconic movies. I know is an active reader of the Film Yap Substack. So Angelo, if you're watching this, let it be known that we do love Hoosiers around.
Sorry,
but so jumping from that, what do you think makes a good basketball movie then, since it doesn't seem to kind of fit in the same categories as other sports movies? What's the criteria for you for making a basketball movie work?
If it's okay by you, I'm going to extrapolate even further. For me, sports movies in general, what makes them work, and this may have something to do with my own personal history or my own issues, father-son relationships generally are the key to sports movies. All my favorite sports movies center on a relationship between fathers and sons. Field of Dreams is probably my favorite sports movie of all time. Certainly there. A few of my other favorite sports movies of all time, Creed. It's maybe the lack of a father figure or a surrogate father figure, or He Got Game, Spike Lee's basketball movie, which I think is an outstanding movie. And Ray Allen, I think, is one of the best, gives one of the best performances that an athlete has given in a movie, short of like maybe OJ and the Naked Gun movies. So I thought he was great in the movie. He felt natural. Some of these guys can't act like Anthony Hardaway in Blue Chips or Shaquille O'Neal in Blue Chips. They're not very good. I thought Ray Allen actually brought a lot of emotion, something interesting in the role of Jesus Shuttlesworth, and He Got Game.
I want you to go to big state, son. You find it in your heart to go to big state, they may let me out on an early parole. I got that arthritis thing.
My brother's got the same arthritic condition. It's going around here in Coney Island.
Yeah. It's contagious.
But why in the hell did you name me Jesus anyway? What type of name is that? Jesus!
It's biblical names.
No kid.
Yeah, and I think that's one of Spike Lee's better early movies that I think kind of has gotten forgotten, unfortunately, a little bit. Yeah, I like that one a lot. I will stand up for Blue Chips a little. I think I did a reeling backward column about it within the last 4 or 5 years or so. And yeah, I'm not going to say that Shaquille O'Neal is a skilled thespian or anything like that, or Penny Hardaway. And I'm a big Penny Hardaway fan. I actually interviewed Penny Hardaway in person. Yeah, a thespian he is not. His line readings are more wooden than the floor of the court that he played on in the movie. But I think it's still a really good movie, in a lot of ways, underrated movie, just because it's showing like the senior side of college ball. Nick Nolte, great performance from him, is playing like a Bob Knight style coach who falls for the lure of corruption and where the desire to win outstrips all things. I think Blue Chips it's not a great movie, but I think it's a good movie, and I think it's an underrated movie, despite the.
Slick, what up, man?
Coach Bell, Neon Bedell.
Hey, bro, how you doing?
Neon, did you ever think about going to college?
I thought about it a few times.
All right, there's a thing called Proposition 48, which says that if your grades aren't up to par, you can take the SATs, and if you score 700 or more, you can get into college. Would you be willing to take the test again?
I don't know, man. Them tests are culturally biased.
Well, everything is culturally biased, Neon. I'm just trying to get you in college.
If I couldn't play basketball, would you be trying to get me in college?
No.
At least you're honest.
Yeah, a good director, William Friedkin, made it, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
And Nolte makes almost any sports movie better. He was in all those football movies from the 70s. like
North Dallas 40.
And he was in another one of my favorite sports movies, Warrior, another father-son movie with Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton, which I think is just a fantastic movie.
Yeah. So the father-son is what does it for you. I'm not sure if I have any kind of specific criteria. I do for basketball. I do want at least a good amount of on-court action. I mean, I don't mind a movie where it's about the human stories, but something like High Flying Bird, where they're just talking about basketball. I remember a lot of people loved that movie, and I was really, I mean, I struggled to get through it.
Do
Basketball.
you tend to like Soderbergh stuff, or is it just kind of?
I'm sorry.
Do you tend to like Steven Soderbergh stuff, or is it kind of hit or miss for you?
He's very hit or miss for me.
When he hits hard, but when he misses, he also misses like just whiffs.
Yeah. I in general, I liked his earlier stuff more than I have like the stuff he's done over like the last 10 or 15 years. I would say I'm kind of the same with the Coen brothers, Joel and Ethan, who are my absolute probably favorite filmmakers when I was in my 20s and even 30s, and I kind of fell off with them, and I'm getting off on a tangent because they have not made any basketball movies.
Maybe Soderbergh to you is kind of like Jordan playing for the Washington Wizards after coming back from retirement, because Soderbergh retired and came back, much like Jordan, perhaps. I don't know.
And the thing is, nobody ever speaks of his Washington Wizards year because it's just like they just wipe it from memory. It's like, yeah, he came back. He was 40 years old. He was kind of chucking it up there just so he could, average 20 points a game. He missed a few dunks. Yeah.
And Jordan ahead of the field. Jordan takes. Whoa!
But yeah, I would probably say, what about some bad basketball movies? I'm trying to think of some. Like, I remember the Basketball Diaries. I didn't care for that one.
I thought DiCaprio's performance in that movie was great. Again, that movie's not all that basketball centered. It's more about he and his buddies doing drugs and getting into trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Probably closer to like Train Spotting than basketball. Uncle Drew from a couple years ago, that was pretty bad.
I did think Chris Webber was surprisingly good in that movie. I wouldn't have seen the movie. I'm a big brother in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, and my little wanted to go see the movie. I also took him to see Space Jam 2, another movie I wouldn't have watched otherwise, but he was really into basketball. I went in with very low expectations and found Uncle Drew to be okay. I think the same guy who directed Uncle Drew, Malcolm D. Lee, directed Space Jam 2. He's Spike Lee's cousin.
Yeah. He was like Spike's cinematographer in a lot of his early movies, and then broke off on his own. I think he still works with Spike sometimes, but a director in his own right now. Semi-pro with Will Ferrell. I didn't care for that one.
Not great, no.
Coach Carter wasn't bad, but it was sort of a little overwrought. It was sort of like they were trying to take like I think a model of the tough coach, taking over a school, and something that they were trying to replicate something that had already been done. I have not cared for either of the Space Jam movies. The first one was better than the second. Whatever you want to say about Michael Jordan, he at least has a screen presence that I don't think LeBron James does. So yeah. Plus, I mean, they're kids movies. I mean, it's kids entertainment with basketball in there.
Yeah, I was a Jordan fanatic as a kid, and by the time Space Jam came out, I was 15. I had zero interest in seeing it. I was way too cool for school regarding that. If it didn't have like Tarantino or Kevin Smith or like Robert Rodriguez or somebody attached, at that time I had zero interest in watching it. So yeah. I didn't see Space Jam until watching it before seeing Space Jam 2, just so I could keep up with the movie. I didn't want to get confused.
Speaking of overrated, since you committed basketball movie apostasy by saying you weren't as huge on Hoosiers as those, I will say when it comes to basketball movies or basketball in general, that I think Michael Jordan is overrated. He's a great player. I don't have him as my number one. I would probably put him number 4 or 5 on my all-time list. But I will say he was a better actor than LeBron James. I'll give him that.
Jordan is my GOAT, and if we're counting it as a movie, Last Dance would be right up there too. I thought it was phenomenal.
Yeah, we talked a little about Last Dance a little before. it kind of maybe doesn't fit in movies. It's definitely a streaming, or it's a documentary series. But I think we can talk about it just because it's in that thing of there aren't a ton of basketball documentaries now that I think about it either. Hoop Dreams was one. Can't think of a ton of others. I should have mentioned, we should mention Chi-Town, which is a documentary. I think you can see that on Amazon Prime right now, and that is about current Indiana Pacers Kiefer Sykes. It's sort of a Hoop Dreams story of him. So it covers him during his high school years of and eventually wanting to play professional basketball, even though he's like a little. I think they list him at 6 foot or 6'1", but he's like my height. It's like 5'10".
I haven't heard of that. I'll have to check it out.
Chi-Town. So it's about him growing up in Chicago. It's on Amazon Prime and it's quite good. It's very much following in the footsteps of Hoop Dreams. But if you like Hoop Dreams, you'll like Chi-Town.
There are a few movies we haven't brought up. Teen Wolf from 1985 with Michael J. Fox. A buddy of mine, Mike Mustin, it's his favorite movie of all time. So if he watches this and doesn't hear me talk about it, he's gonna rip me a new one. There is a lot of basketball action in that movie. I'm not sure how accurate it is to the game. There's like people pantsing each other and stuff, but I enjoy Teen Wolf for what it is. I don't think you mentioned this one either. Above the Rim.
I did.
The early 90s. Probably more popularized for its inclusion of the Warren G and Nate Dogg song Regulate, which was huge in my adolescence. But really good performance from Tupac Shakur in that movie, who I always found to be a very captivating presence on screen. Yeah.
Although I don't think the actual Tupac Shakur played Above the Rim himself.
No, he wasn't even a basketball player in the movie. I think Dwayne Martin, who was in like some of the Scream movies and actually was a professional basketball player at one point, he's in the movie. I think he was a teenager in it. Leon from Cliffhanger was in it.
It's been so long since I saw it. I don't think I've seen it since it came out. So
sure.
That's a good one to include. I did want to mention Love and Basketball, just because I think it's a good one, and also not as much about the on-court stuff. But a basketball romance. I mean, it kind of almost stands alone as two basketball players in a relationship with each other. And if memory serves, I believe it was directed by a Black woman too.
It's the lady who directed The Old Guard. I meant to backtrack. I've never seen Love and Basketball. I've seen pieces of it on HBO.
Yeah, it's good. It's very sweet.
Gina Price Blythewood, maybe.
Yeah.
I know, is it Sana Lathan is in the movie and Omar Epps, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah. I've heard nothing but good things.
Yeah. So maybe we should end on just talking about what's the future for basketball movies that you see. Like I say, I don't think I've really seen any good, outstanding basketball movies that focus on the basketball over the last 5 or 10 years that's coming into my brain. I mean,
did you see Boogie by chance?
Say,
did you see Boogie from last year?
No, I didn't. If I recall, wasn't that about like an Asian American?
Yeah, which kind of is an interesting spin on it. Very hip hop infused. I would say that's important to basketball movies too, at least to me as a kid or teenager of the 90s. Above the Rim, Sunset Park, all these movies were very hip hop infused. I think that's the direction we should probably go with it if we're moving in the future. Infuse more hip hop, and I think that would help.
Kind of take it back to where it was maybe in the 1990s when it seemed like there were more of them and they were more popular.
Correct.
All right. Well, thanks, Alec, for joining me. We're not going to go into overtime, but if you're a basketball fan like I am, and I'm sure Alec, like you are, check out some of these movies. A lot of them they're all out there for streaming or rental or however you want to watch your films. And we appreciate you guys. And Wilt Chamberlain is the GOAT.
Go Hoosiers.